We need to start having justified, I guess you could call it like a mainstream mass Red Scare movement where we start rounding people up who express these sentiments in support of communism and Islamic Jihad.
And you heard people say, don't you believe in the First Amendment? They don't even know what the First Amendment believes. Do you want to deplatform people? You know, the libs do that. I don't have any problem with deplatforming Nazis or jihadis.
Yeah, well, the problem is Mark Levin labels anyone and everyone who simply and merely criticizes Israel a Nazi or a jihadist. And so if we're going to allow lunatics like that to violate Americans' First Amendment rights because they dare criticize Israel, if we're going to allow them to be the arbiters of who is deemed a Nazi, then you can kiss your First Amendment rights goodbye. Now, Laura Loomer and Mark Levin, two of the most fervently pro-Israel commentators in American media, are now calling for Americans to lose their rights for merely criticizing Israel. And anyone that they smear as an Islamist or a jihadist or a Nazi would be a target of this witch hunt brigade. I'm not kidding. So I'm going to show you the receipts, including a lengthy list of the individuals that Mark Levin specifically has referred to as a Nazi. Disturbingly, both Loomer and Levin have the president's ear, and that's why they're worth discussing and talking about here. So the Loomer segment that you just watched in that video was from last night's edition of Loomer Unleashed. No one wants that, where she was discussing the second indictment of James Comey. That's a story that we will be covering on the show a little later. But you'll notice that she mentions several people who have nothing to do with James Comey at all, right? Who have never threatened the president in any way, shape, or form, but have definitely been critical of Israel. So she exploits the Comey indictment in which the federal government, the DOJ, alleges that Comey threatened Trump's life. We'll get to that story later. You can decide whether or not you believe that. But my point is Loomer exploits that to make a point about Israel's critics in the US. And she just smears them as people who made threats against Trump without providing a shred of evidence that that's the case. She's inciting violence toward these people. So let's get some more of her take here.
People need to start going to jail. You shouldn't be allowed to make these types of comments if you're Jimmy Kimmel and Kathy Griffin and all these other crazies out there, Rosie O'Donnell and James Comey. We know all the worst offenders, right? Hassan Piker. Who else out there? There's so many of these lunatics out there. There's so many of these communist Muslim freaks that make threats against the president on a daily basis. Mehdi Hassan. I mean, these people are just so sick, the worst of the worst in our society. And it's time for them to start getting rounded up in jail. They need to go to jail. I think Mehdi Hassan needs to be denaturalized. I think a lot of these Muslim agitators who are at these protests holding up these signs, and the communists as well, we need to start rounding these people up. We need to start channeling our inner Joseph McCarthy. We need to start going on our own witch hunts in America against these communist jihadists.
Yeah, mission accomplished, Laura. That's what you do every day. Someone's funding you to literally do that every day. The people she listed haven't made threats against Trump's life. Mehdi Hassan, really? He made a threat against Trump? Where, when, how? And we're talking about Laura Loomer, who regularly doxes private Americans. These are people who are not public figures, but happen to be married to or in a family with someone who is a public figure and is just simply critical of Israel. Okay, she did it to Trump. She did it to Cenk's wife. Another person whose identity I definitely know and will be revealing soon once I get one more piece of confirmation, which I'm very close to, did it to me, doxed my husband and his place of work. When you're doxing someone's place of work, what do you think you're doing there? Now, they do it under the cover of we're trying to get them fired, which, by the way, is bad enough, especially since they're trying to engage in collective punishment over an American citizen's criticism of Israel, which is protected by the First Amendment. But that's bad enough. Trying to get someone fired over the commentary of their spouse, bad enough. But Loomer knows what she's doing. Okay, the so-called Persian Jewess on X, Rachel, who decided to dox my husband, knows what she was doing. They're inciting violence. They're literally letting people know, these unhinged Zionists in this country who put out insane threats against Americans on a regular basis. I can show you the social media messages I've gotten, including IDF soldiers showing me their weapons and basically implying that they're gonna come for me and slaughter me. They make those threats all the time. So they know how unhinged these individuals are. And when you're putting a person's place of work out there in the public, you're making a call for action, aren't you? That goes a little beyond just getting someone fired. You are directing violence toward them. That's what Laura Loomer does every single day. She directs violence against American citizens the same way her injector, okay, incites violence against her face. Girl, you gotta balance out the temples. You're gonna plump up those cheeks. You gotta balance out the temples. What you doing? You look like a clown. Okay, but that's beside the point. You don't need that much filler in your cheeks. That's crazy. But she's not the only one. She's not the only Israeli firster who hates our constitutional rights, because our constitutional rights protect our freedom to be critical of a foreign country like Israel, which is leveling southern Lebanon right now as we speak, including Christian villages. So Mark Levin is also going on his own personal crusade, his own little McCarthy, witch hunt against Israel's critics. And again, you'll see Mark Levin, claim that his main concern here, his real concern, is the rhetoric surrounding Trump and whether or not it incites violence. Okay, but then you'll catch what Levin is actually concerned about. Take a look.
I'm talking about the kind of speech that really gets in the head of people who want to do grave damage to other people. Incitement. And I'm not talking about it in an ambiguous way. When you get a guy that talks about killing a senator, oh, I really didn't mean it. Or when you get a guy that says, yeah, I don't know if there's really rape, can you prove it, and so forth on October 7th. Well, he's allowed to say that. But in the pattern of what this person is saying, what is it that they're trying to do? Have a real discussion? No. No, he'll say that, but he's not. The overthrow of the country, let me ask you this. Do you think the founders would have put up with this?
If you want an example of the types of discussions or debates that Mark Levin engages in, just check out his interview with Joe Kent. The Trump official who stepped down from the administration after Israel goaded us into a disastrous war against Iran. Yeah, that Joe Kent. Because he was kind enough to go on Mark Levin's show. Mark Levin wasn't interested in having a debate or a discussion. The hog pretended like he couldn't hear Joe Kent. As soon as Joe Kent started cooking, he immediately went to break. That's who Mark Levin is. Mark Levin's loyalty is not to the United States or its Constitution or the American people. Mark Levin's loyalties lie someplace else, and he proves it every single day. Whenever someone in this country, someone who has a microphone, someone who has the power of the bully pulpit to push for something, decides to push for the deterioration of Americans' constitutional rights on behalf of a foreign country, that person is not loyal to the United States. Clearly. My heritage is Armenian. I love Armenia. I love the Armenian people. You can be as critical of Armenia as you want. The idea that I would ever even consider going on a witch hunt against my fellow Americans because they're critical of the Armenian government. And that's the other thing. Man, that insecurity, that is some deep-seated insecurity where you can't handle criticism, where you have to silence it, you have to squash it immediately. Why? Why is that? What is it that you don't want the American people to learn about? Is it the same things that Robert Maxwell didn't want American children to learn about in our public schools as he was publishing our history and social studies books. You know, the same Robert Maxwell who worked for Mossad and was Ghislaine Maxwell's dad. Do you share some commonalities with him, Levin? Now, over the weekend, Levin referred to the Marxist Islamic left. This is my favorite tactic of like the Fox News crowd. Just put a bunch of scary sounding words together, even if it makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. But anyway, so he referred to the Marxist Islamic left and the woke right, referring to conservatives who are critical of Israel, as the enemy within. I would venture to say the enemy within would want to, take rights away from Americans. I think that's the enemy within. And in case you're not quite tired of the phrase Islamic jihadist yet, here's more of Levin's crash out.
This guy, Hassan Piker, who is a radical Islamist, if not jihadist. He celebrates 9/11. He says he has no patriotic connection to the United States, and on and on and on. October 7th, he was okay with all the raping and the murdering and the mayhem. The Democrat Party embraces this guy. You got people like Ro Kahana who go on a show and they're proud of it and they go back. You've got Democrats campaigning with this guy, and he urged people, I think, to harm you, as a matter of fact. What do you make of that?
Ro Kahana, huh? Interesting. Look, sometimes it pains me to defend Haas because Haas has never once defended me, even though he knows who I am and knows that the attacks against me are ridiculous. But nonetheless, I'm going to go ahead and defend Haas. I disagree with him on some stuff. Who cares? He is not a jihadist. That is an insane statement to make. But he is vocally critical of Israel, and he is obviously incredibly popular and influential. And that's the thing. They target those who are effective in communicating what's actually going on. How much of a chokehold Israel has on the United States. How much undue influence Israel and its lobby has on the American political system. And Mark Levin no like that. He yearns for the days when the gatekeepers were able to withhold that information from the American people. But Mark, those days are gone. They're gone. And the harder they try to censor us, the more it backfires. That's the thing. They don't realize it. I mean, I don't want to help them out, but if they were smart, they would realize, oh yeah, that all that censorship we're trying to do is actually backfiring. It's making people more curious about what Israel's up to. How do I know that? Well, because I know people who have been targeted by the likes of Mark Levin, Canary Mission, Stop Anti-Semitism, all these gross, shadowy groups who target specific individuals who are private citizens. And they might not have even said anything about Israel, right? They might not even be political in any way, shape, or form, but they have someone in their family who's a public figure that's critical of Israel. And then when they become targets, you know what happens? They get real curious. They get curious about what Israel's up to. And then they learn more. So what Mark Levin and Laura Loomer and Rachel, the Persian Jewess, like to do on social media by doxing people and targeting people and censoring people, that is only helping Americans who want other Americans who are in the dark to know what the truth is about Israel and its undue influence over our political system. So thank you, I guess. Now, it would be okay, I guess, if it didn't incite violence or attempt to destroy the lives of innocent Americans who are doing absolutely nothing wrong. But it's a lose-lose situation when they engage in this. But they're too dumb to understand it or realize it. Just because you were able to effectively censor Americans in the past. And when I say effective, I mean literally effective. So many Americans were in the dark about what our relationship with Israel really is. But you can't do that anymore. Those days are gone. They're done, finished. We just had 2.5 years of a live stream genocide. You think we're going to be able to unsee that? We see how much money we're willing to sacrifice, how many American soldiers we're willing to sacrifice for Israel. You think we're going to forget about that because you censored Hassan? Wake the F up, man. And by the way, let's get back to the notion that Americans should be rounded up and jailed simply by being determined as Nazis by the actual modern day Nazis, the people who think the mass slaughter of innocents is okay, people like Laura Loomer and Mark Levin, who has Mark Levin referred to as a Nazi? It's a long list, real long list. And I want to thank the redheaded libertarian for putting this list together on X. This has been, what I'm about to share with you has been adapted from the list that she shared on X. So this is, again, everyone who Mark Levin has called a Nazi since 2024. The Democrats, like the entirety of the Democratic Party, okay. The Democrat media, an Australian bakery, the Pakistani defense minister, Scott Horton. He calls Scott Horton a Nazi. The entire Libertarian Party, man, whole political parties are apparently Nazis, according to Mark Levin here. College students, just in general, all college students, you guys are all Nazis, according to Mark Levin. You should be rounded up. You should have your First Amendment rights stripped from you. The Ayatollah, Jake Shields, Nick Fuentes, Putin's buddies. I don't even know who Putin's buddies are, but apparently Putin's buddies. Dan Bilzerian, the Houthis, Dave Smith. Dave Smith is Jewish, but okay. Tucker Carlson, Beirut, the entire city of Beirut, Lebanon. Hezbollah, a veteran who asked Mark to be more tolerant. There's more. There's Myron Gaines, the city of London, everyone in London's guilty. Hamas, Thomas Friedman, the terrorists, the woke Reich, Graham Plattner, the entirety of the United Nations, of course, obviously, Harvard, top university in the country, if not the world, Nazi. Amsterdam, Columbia University students, the New York Times, which has provided cover for Israel's war crimes time and time again, and serves as stenographers oftentimes for members of the intelligence community that try to drag us into wars to begin with. I mean, it's never ending. The Iranian Nazi regime, the Islamic Nazi regime, the Islamo-Nazi regime, the Islamist Nazi regime, all of Iran, the new Nazis, a protester on a subway. I mean, Rashida Tlaib, Ibrahim Raisi, the New York Times correspondent, Joe Biden's entire State Department, the president of Turkey, college basketball analyst Bruce Pearl. What did Bruce Pearl do? What did Bruce Pearl do to be called a Nazi by Mark Levin? By the way, for all the right wingers who get upset at left wingers referring to Trump as a fascist or a Nazi because they feel that it incites violence toward him, come get your boy, all right? Because he's literally calling anyone and everyone a Nazi merely for being critical of Israel. That's it. That's all it takes. Certain Arab liberals and journalists, anyone who associates with Dave Smith. Oh, I guess I'm a Nazi then because I associate with Dave Smith, who, by the way, very well read and crushes in debates. That's why he's calling him a Nazi. Reporter Lulu Garcia Navarro, ISIS. 17 random dudes on X. Okay. All right. You guys get the point. You guys get the point. So if it were up to them, if it were up to Mark Levin, all of those people, places, cities, whatever, institutions I listed, Nazis, should be rounded up, thrown in prison, First Amendment rights taken away. These people are unhinged and they don't realize how counterproductive they're being for their own cause. And look, I want to end with one other thing because it's really important. This kind of garbage, unfortunately, reflects poorly on the Jewish community, and it's unfair to them because they didn't ask for this. But when you have lunatics like Laura Loomer and Mark Levin, presenting themselves as the representatives of the entire Jewish community, idiots are unfortunately going to believe them and think that, yeah, this is what all Jewish people want. They want violations of constitutional rights. They want Americans to be rounded up and thrown in prison over criticism of Israel. No, but they don't want that. Some do, unfortunately. But you can't make blanket statements about an entire population of people, because there are plenty of Jewish people who look at this, they hate it, and honestly, they're afraid for their own safety, because this is the kind of stuff that unfortunately leads to unhinged people directing violence toward them. So please don't do that. Please, because it's so dumb to stoop as low as these bottom feeders like Laura Loomer and Mark Levin. Jewish Americans are our fellow Americans, period. They should be protected. Their rights should be protected. Our rights should be protected. And the only people in this story that deserve condemnation are the likes of Laura Loomer and Mark Levin.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.